Okay, class, as you know, we've been studying Chinese history.
Yeah.
We have?
Yes, and I'm going to be your teacher today. I'm Rachel.
I'm Danny.
Hi, I'm Mara.
And I'm Sydney.
Well, today we're going all the way to the beginning.
In the beginning.
It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their...
Wow. I'm not talking about the Bible or Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, Part 1.
You're not?
No, I'm talking about the Shang Dynasty.
Didn't they, cut up their babies' bones or something?
Actually, they didn't cut into human bones. They drew on the bones or shells of animals.
Gross.
That is correct. The oracle bones told of the lives of the king and his court and were used in rituals and divination.
Which is...
Communicating with the gods or with ancestors.
Oh.
But those really don't appear until later in this era. Let's go back a little.
To the beginning?
Exactly. The Shang Dynasty is often considered the start of Chinese history because so little is known of the preceding Shang Dynasty.
This is because there was no written record of their existence.
Right, the Shang rose to dominance around 1750 BCE.
Before Common Era?
Yes.
And they ruled northern China in the Yellow River Valley.
Because of their location, the civilization was susceptible to random and dangerous flooding.
Well, yes. How did you...
Ehrlich, we got this.
It's hard to say how much territory the Shang Dynasty was actually in control of.
Because the materials used to build their towns...
Wood, earth, etc.
...were vulnerable to China's temperatures and flooding.
Though the Yellow River Valley provided a constant fresh water source for drinking and cleaning, Chinese river valleys were famous for spontaneous destruction.
The dynasty was also decentralized, which adds to the question of how much territory was really under Shang control.
If it was decentralized, how was it ruled?
You guys know this one. Almost every civilization in the universe has been...
Patriarchal.
No wonder the world's in such a mess.
The dynasty would have been ruled by a militaristic king.
Though, due to the dynasty's fragmentation, many local leaders possessed quite a bit of power.
Miss E, I'm sure there's a government out there that's matriarchal.
Yeah, just look at Queen Amidala. She's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, but she's pretty ugly.
Just because there's a queen at one point in a country's history...
Anyway, the first emperor of the Shang Dynasty was a guy called King Tang. He overthrew Jie, the last Xia emperor. Tang was loved for leading his people with benevolence and justice.
Hey, why is the Shang Dynasty sometimes called the Yin Dynasty?
Those names are used interchangeably because the Shang capital was always based in Yin,
Which is now Anyang, city of the Henan province. Like we were saying before we digress, the people of the Shang Dynasty had a limited amount of stone available, so most of their buildings were made out of clay, dirt, and wood. Very vulnerable materials. This is part of the reason we know so little about them.
We do know that the cities used a grid system in accordance with the cardinal directions, though most of the common people lived in small farming communities outside the surrounding cities.
Clever. Did they ever have border issues?
Well, they did have to fight off some annoying nomad groups to the north every once in a while, but for the most part the Shang were conquerors.
Yeah, the Shang elite class was made up of warriors who fought with bronze weapons.
Because the Shang are famous for developing bronze metallurgy.
Right.
And they rode into battle on horse-drawn chariots.
Prisoners of war were taken as state-owned slaves to work or to be sacrificed to the gods.
Or the ancestors. The Shang were big on ancestor worship.
They worship dead people?
Their supreme god was Di, who controlled storms. The Shang believed that when someone dies, their soul lives in the sky with Di and the other gods of nature.
The heavenly hierarchy resembled the earthly social hierarchy.
And the spirits of ancestors could interfere with human affairs.
That brings us back to the oracle bones.
Take it away, Miss E.
Quick question. Does this have anything to do with the Oracle in the Matrix?
You mean that random black lady? She reminds me of Mama Odie in that Disney movie.
Kind of, sure. The people would pose questions to the gods, inscribing them on the bones.
Then they'd heat up the bones.
I got this, thanks. Then they'd heat up the bones and interpret the resulting cracks as the gods' answer. The king would act as a messenger for the gods and people, almost like a prophet.
Okay, so Oracle bones and metallurgy. What else were the Shang known for?
The dynasty was based on agriculture.
Wheat and barley were some primary crops.
They also fished, raised dogs, silkworms, and pigs.
Did they eat the dogs?
And because they had advanced metallurging skills, bronze tools, weapons, instruments, and even ships could be found in that era. The most famous bronze work of this time would have to be the Simu quadruped. This vessel, a type of cooking device, weighs over 800 pounds.
That's more than Jabba the Hutt.
No, it's not.
The Shang's elite lives quite a charmed life, dressed in silk and buried with their valuable possessions in death.
That's cool. What would you want to be buried with?
My little brother.
How sweet.
How morbid.
I'd want my Homer Simpson chia pet buried with me.
Guys, aren't we forgetting the most important development of the Shang people?
Probably.
What?
The Shang developed a pictographic writing system with over 3,000 characters.
How would we know that?
The writing appeared on early vessels and oracle bones. This was a unique development in East Asia and helped unify the dynasty.
Wow, Siegel, way to go.
Yeah, let's recap the facts.
That rhymes.
The Shang Dynasty is considered the beginning of China's history, and its first emperor was King Tang.
The Shang believed in their supreme god, Di, and they worshipped their ancestors.
Some of their major developments were bronze metallurgy, oracle bones, and the unique writing system that modern Chinese language writing is based off of.
This dynasty lasted about 600 years until the last emperor, Zhao, was overthrown by Wu, leader of the Zhao tribe. Confusing, I know. This put an end to the Shang dynasty and made way for a new one, the Zhao dynasty.
And that's the Shang Dynasty in a nutshell.
I wonder how you guys knew all that stuff.
Ehrlich, today you were supposed to be teaching us about Japan. We learned about the Shang yesterday.